Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us here at Avanti for today's webinar, Optimize Your ESM Workflows with Automation. My name is Michael from the Content Marketing team. I'm just going to go over some quick housekeeping items right off the bat here, and then we can get started hearing from the people you actually came to hear from. So we are going to be aiming for right around half an hour today with today's conversation. Our presenters are live in chat throughout this call. We will be trying to answer questions as we go. We will also realistically be saving some for the end. So if you do have questions, feel free to pop those in and we will answer them in due course. The other important thing to note from today's presentation is that you will find a whole bunch of content related to today's topic on the On24 platform. So do feel free to check all of that out after we are through today. But with that, I will kick it over to Phil to get us started. So thanks again for joining us and hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Phil Bowermaster. I'm Senior Director of Solutions Marketing for Avanti's ESM Solutions, which includes our ITSM, our ITAM, and our line of business solutions, things like HR, facilities, and security operations management. We have enterprise service management solution packages that extend service management capability with things like discovery and workspace, DEX, and healing. And I think those kinds of intelligence and automation capabilities are going to be very relevant to our discussion today. Joining us today, we have two special guests to talk with us about their own experiences extending service management capability with automation. First, we have James Wiltorton, who is the Technology Service and Operations Director for NCC Group. Welcome, James.
Hello.
And we've got Jesse Miller, who's the ITSM Senior Administrator for SCI. Hello, Jesse.
Hey, thanks for having us on. We're glad to be here today.
It's great. It's great having both you guys with us. And why don't we start out as we get into the subject of extending ESM with automation, I think maybe a little grounding in how you're using automation tools in ESM workflows in each of your organizations. James, if we start with you, I know one good use case we talked about is employee administration. So what kind of things are you automating at NCC Group around that?
Yeah, hi everyone. So we're using automation to help us with areas of employee administration, like you said. So for example, we'll use it for starters, leavers tasks, and then automation of management of access to groups. So that's adding people, removing people, the normal kind of workflows for that. And then also we use it across other areas. So approval workflows, we use it to make sure we've got cost approvals, security approval, all that kind of cadence that you want to make sure you get. We also use it to look back and use it for auditing information. So if we get audited or we want to audit our processes, we've got the kind of workflows and the information in it to kind of look at kind of what's working or what's not working. And then another kind of good area we use it for is asset management. So again, automation of approvals, automation of chasing for equipment to be returned as some good examples.
Okay, well, we'll come back to asset management because I know Jesse has some things to tell us about that as well. When we talk about employee administration, I know one of the big challenges we talk about on our line of business side is kind of uniting HR and facilities and IT is employee onboarding and then ultimately employee offboarding. Is that a big part of what you've been working on automating when it comes to employee administration, or is it more internal processes during kind of the life cycle of the employee?
Yeah, I think all of that in that sense. So we talked before about obviously we use it to help employee administration and help shift things left, I suppose. So to make sure things get done, make sure things get done on time, make sure things get done, with less mistakes or less risk, that sort of stuff. And then we've got something to work off as well. So if we get feedback from our users or colleagues or that sort of area, or even the business where the process doesn't quite work, then the beauty of it is we can go, okay, where the workflow did not work, what do we need to adjust, that type of stuff, and then build improvements in. So that's important, I suppose, to us being a security company to kind of make sure that we, reduce that security risk, reduce some mistakes, and have a good kind of user experience as well, which is really, really important in that sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, onboarding is the first thing you do when you work someplace. You're going to have a good experience or a bad experience. It's all going to start right there. So if automation can help make that a good start, you're heading in the right direction for sure. All right, let's bring Jesse into this. Let's talk a little bit about. James had mentioned asset management, and I know that at SCI, Jesse, you guys are leveraging automation for asset management. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, for us, everything starts with discovery, right? So if you don't know what you've got, you're kind of flying blind. So for us, everything starts with discovery. We're currently utilizing the Neurons for discovery tool, but we're doing basically automation to pick up once we have things discovered, picking up devices, populating our CMDB, as well as with software, tracking that, making sure we know where the assets are. If somebody decides, hey, I'm traveling somewhere and I stick this tablet or this device in a drawer, or I take this mini machine, stick it in a drawer for 3 to 6 months, whatever. And we like to send nastygrams to them saying, hey, this device hasn't been online in 30 days. We need to get it online, and we track that. Or if you've moved it with you to this office with the laptop and you're changing locations, you need to let somebody know. Kind of like James said, we keep that user experience, but also the security for that is really important. A very well-maintained CMDB has a lot to do with the user experience, but also with security, right? So you have to maintain that and automate that and create workflows to say something has changed. We see in discovery that the user has changed. So now we need to validate that with the user, sending them that message, getting them to validate that, yep, I have done this, or no, I just took my machine with me over to grandma's house for 2 weeks where we were on vacation, and I'm not actually working out of the office that's down the street over there. I'm just took my laptop with me, or whatever. So we do all those stuff to make sure we're creating a clean and updated, and we don't have blanks in our CMDB. And when something does, like whether it's a lost or missing, whatever, you take all the precautions through workflows to make sure that gets handled properly. Or when if something is at end of life, you go through the proper disposal process and you go through those and it's handled, and you're tracking that from your life cycle management is handled appropriately. And there's a lot of people that go through and we audit that process down, because really you don't want a lot of hands in the cookie jar. You want it to just follow appropriately. And I'm sure James can talk to that about, you don't want hands in the cookie jar. Just make sure it flows properly and it's just going, like you said, shifting left. So we're doing that and saying not just with assets, but also with software as well for utilization, also, license management, that kind of stuff. So all handled in that same process.
Yeah, well, when you start talking CMDB, you're so speaking my language. I got to tell you, we emphasize the importance of that so much. And also, I love that you mentioned discovery. We've been talking for a long time at Ivanti about the importance of ITSM and ITAM together. We talk about how they're better together. And lately, we've been kind of expanding that message. Say discovery, ITSM, and ITAM better together. If you've got all of that going at the same time, you're really populating that CMDB the way you should. So, Dave, let's bring you into this. Can you talk a little bit about what asset management looks like at NCC?
Yeah. It helps us have business approval to connect it to the assets, so we can kind of make sure that, a bit like what you said, if you don't know what assets you've got, then you can't really manage them. So it helps us kind of go, okay, well, what assets have we got? And then let's make sure we've got business approval connected to them assets to make sure we've kind of got control. And that could be kind of spend control. That could kind of, be budget holder control. That could be control from a security perspective. Is it approved? Is it not approved as software? That could be management visibility to make sure kind of, can this person request this piece of software or this asset, like hardware, whatever it could be, that type of stuff. So again, it just allows us to kind of automate that. Again, shift it left, like we said before, so it's not, the pressure isn't on the service desk to contact someone to kind of go, okay, can they have this, keyboard, and then, check with the manager or check with the budget holder, that sort of stuff. It's all automated. Makes it a lot more kind of streamlined, a bit like a shopping cart that you might get off the site, that type of stuff. So yeah.
A question for both of you on this. I think when we talk about automation applied to a process like asset management, we're going to tend to think, oh, okay, well, it's going to make it easier. It's going to save time. All the benefits of automation, correct? But talk about how it's going to be different if you're still doing it manually from a standpoint of completeness. Are you going to get all the assets as reliably if you haven't automated as you do with automation?
Start if you want.
Since we're still on you.
Yeah, sounds good. So I would say no, because obviously you lose that consistency. So the beauty of that kind of automation and everything else is that you can kind of go through and consistently, do something in one way, and then you can audit it or reflect on it, and then you'll kind of find gaps. But then you can kind of go, okay, yeah, we've missed this, but then you can kind of build that into your automation and have the next iteration or the next version of it. So slowly but surely you kind of close that gap, and then you learn from mistakes. Whereas if you've got a manual process, then everyone's always got a different interpretation or a different way of doing things, or there's always that risk that, it's a Friday and I forgot one of the steps, that type of stuff. So you don't get that consistency. That would be my stance on it.
Jesse, would you agree? Is it just an easier and faster process, or is it a more complete and secure one as well when you automate?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both, right? And part of it is you have to think about when automating, if it's garbage to begin with, you're just automating, you're just creating more garbage. So there is that. However, when you have a good process that you're automating, you're streamlining, you're reducing risk. It all begins with risk. If it's smaller, then I have less risk, and we're speeding that along. And how might I do that more efficiently and be able to maximize potential and my return on my investment, and time management and human resources on that. But it's not just that, but if I have one person doing something like James said, then I have multiple people doing a manual process. But with asset management, I have to have a task or an asset goes out and might get an import from Insight or CDW or whoever. And then I have to also manually check that again and again and again and again. But a machine can do that instantly against a discovery piece. And it's not efficient. You just don't have the time, the money, the energy, the people, and it's not a good use of their ability, right? Automation is a remedial small task versus a person is capable of doing so much more. And that's why automation is great, right? A person is creative. Automation is, again, it's remedial. A person can grow and can do things. And that's what I love about automation. It frees people up to do amazing things. Let them do those amazing things.
Absolutely. Frees people up to do the kinds of things human beings can do, right? As opposed to things that an automated process can do. It makes a lot of sense. So James, one aspect of management automation that you mentioned we're talking is audits. So can you unpack for us a little bit about how you're making use of automation when it comes to audits? I think that's going to be of a lot of interest to a lot of folks.
Yeah, definitely. So we use it to help kind of audit assets. So we kind of make sure they're true and correct. So it might be that we reach out to people and say, okay, we've got these assets assigned here. Can we just do, a quick random check or a check for a group, and get them to confirm it? So it kind of helps make sure our records are true and correct. And it goes back to what I said before, that if we get a lot of feedback back where they're like, no, this isn't correct, then it gives us that reflection to kind of go, okay, well, is our automation actually working? Have we got the right workflows? Have we done something wrong? We can go through and get that kind of consistency, that type of stuff. So it's really good to kind of self-reflect, improve on the process and make it better. And then likewise, it's good from a kind of compliance, it gives us kind of checks that we can put in place, or we can show to auditors to say, okay, we've got these processes in place and they do work, and here's the kind of evidence and here's the steps it goes through that you can see to kind of show that it works. It kind of keeps us true and correct, I suppose, is a thing to say, and helps us kind of move to the next iteration and build them improvements in.
Kind of similar to the question when we talk about asset management, I guess it's very closely related, but when you apply automation to audits, what would you say is the biggest the biggest single advantage that's going to provide you? Is it faster? It's more thorough? What's the benefit of automating that?
Yeah, I think it's faster. It's consistency, probably, again, because you've got a consistent workflow, consistent process, which again is good, if you know what I mean, because that's where you can kind of go, okay, it's not a case of you speak to one person at the service desk and they go, I do A, B, C, and then you speak to someone else at the service desk and they go, well, I do X, Y, Z. You've got that consistency. We've got one way of working, for good or bad, and then you can understand it, take that feedback. You can always improve, I believe, in that sense, and you can kind of keep making it better, if you know what I mean, and adjust it. Businesses change, business needs change, so you kind of be mindful of, again, you do need to have them regular reviews of your processes and them, and then automations in that sense, and that audit helps that, if you know what I mean, and then you can kind of go, is it still relevant? Do we still work this way? Do we need to adjust it? That type of stuff. So it helps you kind of measure it and make sure it's true and correct.
Absolutely. Jesse, we come now to my favorite topic. This is the one everyone's waiting for. We get to talk about bots. Okay. Everybody's excited about bots. Let's talk a little bit about self-healing bots. I understand that you guys have been making use of those. Can you give us one or two examples of what you're doing with bots and the kind of difference that they're making for how you operate?
Yeah, so we have over 2,700 locations, right? And imagine keeping those fresh, lively, jumping, and so we basically use bots to do a lot of things. And just a simple example is we have one that goes through, and I call it the cleaning bot, right? It basically goes through and makes those things, the endpoints, like new, right? And everything, we would have a person come through and inside the office and go through and have to put a hands on, like a technician to visit all those office. No, within 30 minutes, it's doing all of that task. So we're talking about saving hundreds of thousands of dollars, but also the man hours of traveling to all of those places. And then the preventative maintenance of just looking and saying, hey, is BitLocker, encrypted, right? Or is that a problem? Is there disk space? Is there a problem? Is there latency issues? Am I having, all problems with, all the way through that you would check? You would have that technician go through and check maybe all the way through. It just does it, right? And it checks it over and over and over again. And it's just saying, if there's a problem, then you send it to the help desk, and then it tells it where the problem's at. Everything down to, I have a battery capacity issue. Just go ahead and let's get that ordered and replaced before the user even knows there's a problem. So it's true healing on the edge, but at a cost reduction, at a time reduction, everything. And then at the same time, those are broken down into single one click, like you're checking out, like James said, you're checking out the shopping cart, like just bang, one click. Hey, user clicks or puts in a ticket, bang, there's a problem. I can do that, right? I can clean out the storage. I can do whatever with one click out, and it's just done. And they're customized for our environment. Maybe more than one demonstration, but we've been able to use them to mold them for us, and it's been very important, right? In our industry. So we love it. I love bots. I couldn't know what I would do without being able to make automation work in that way. So I hope that answers the question.
One of the interesting things about bots is certainly get back to what we were talking about before. You talk about, well, when you automate tasks, you can free up humans to do the kinds of tasks that humans are going to be good at. But now you're talking about tasks that it really would never make sense to try to have people do anyway, right? I mean, not at the level, not for the duration or at the speed that a bot can do it. Now, you've kind of turned it the other way. It's like, this is the ideal kinds of tasks for automation, right?
Yeah, I mean, imagine if saying, hey, now I've got to ask somebody who doesn't understand what to look for anyway, to go in here to disable, like, say, a VPN thing, to go in here, click this up arrow thing and look for this and do this to help this walk through, do this. No, click this. Hey, meanwhile, oh, you have a dog. So like you're enabling a tier 1 technician to use a bedside manner or something that they understand to go fix it. Meanwhile, they're still doing the introduction. Bam, we're fixed. I'm still jotting in my notes. We're done. Oh, great. Excellent. Can you try that for me? Oh, we're done. Excellent. They're still up. It worked. Oh, I'm so glad that's working for you. Again, if you have anything else, make sure to let us know. And we're done. One click solution to solve their problems. And it's, and like, oh, okay, great. And they came in angry. They're leaving with a problem solved. And that's the same for the Dex score, right? Because we're tracking Dex is about a human experience. And we're able to look and say, how do we automate solutions to fix the human experience, to say they're having a bad day. I want them to have a good day, because if the people are not productive, they're not doing a good job. And it's how do we change that? How do I make that better? Right. I'm using the tools that I have to say, what are my repeat issues, right? Outside of password resets, because we can do that 100 different ways. And saying, how do I fix that and enable the people that are actually boots on the ground doing the job? You tell me what you need to fix. Let me automate that in a one-click solution for you. And that's what I love about what Bots does.
Yeah, absolutely. You get a better human experience by getting that right division of labor between humans and automation. So, James, let me pull you in here and let's talk about a quintessentially human task within a lot of different workflows. You'll have them in financial workflows, you have them in technology workflows, and that's approvals. Now, there's a part of that obviously there's a human who's going to step in and give or not give an approval. But can you talk a little bit about how automation is actually making that process work better for you?
Yeah, so I think if you use the example of software requests, actually, which is a good one, is you can build the automation into that, and you can kind of go, okay, what does your business need for a workflow? And every business will be different. And sometimes actually within businesses, you have different workflows depending on kind of what units you've got. But you can build that automation and you can have that variation. And a good example is you might go, okay, we need a line manager to approve, this software request. And then we need a cost center approval to approve this software request. The beauty with automation is you don't have to worry about, I'm on the service desk and I'm going to go and speak to John, who's in finance, to approve this software. If John leaves next week and then Barry, probably English name, Barry takes over, you don't have to kind of know all that information because it can all be automated. So in the background, it's kind of one less thing to worry about. You don't need to think about all the different connections. You can have the workflow that's all automated. And then it just goes off and goes, okay, who's this person's line manager? Uses the information that you've got on the system to go after the right person at the right time, if you know what I mean. You don't have to worry about starters and leavers and changes in departments. And then exactly the same for the cost center approval. It can go to whoever the current cost center approval is, or a delegate if they're away, or on leave or vacation. And it's all automated. So it kind of gets rid of that friction, a bit like we talked about that kind of like, Amazon cart example or other companies similar. It gives you that nice, smooth kind of line to kind of go through and process, which is really good. And for an end user, you get that user experience. It's faster, or it should be faster if not your workflow needs optimizing.
So it's really the workflow of approvals that's being optimized there.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think what James did, or saying, is that you're able to take the technology out of that, right? And explain, the people understand and aren't afraid. And James, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like once one person or business unit does that, it's like, wow, I had a great experience with that. I'm no longer afraid, because people understand a flow, right?
Yes.
But they don't necessarily understand the technology behind what's doing it. And once they see it and believe it, and I mean, that's what I do.
That's our job, isn't it? I suppose for them, it's just be a nice process where they ask for something, it gets approved, and they get it as quick as kind of possible. So it's like the opposite effect. Like you said, sometimes we've built our workflows and said, actually, we've got too many approvals and it is too complicated. And you take that feedback and then you can we don't need this approval, and you can remove on that type of stuff. So exactly that, it's kind of making it a lot more seamless journey and removing that kind of tech experience where someone doesn't have to go and phone the help desk or service desk to kind of get something done, which is always nice for us and always nice for them in that sense.
Yeah, well, the great thing about this example is I don't have to ask what would it be like if it were not automated, because I know, and everybody watching and listening to this knows what it's like to have to go through a manual approvals process. So it's like that's a tremendous improvement for anybody to have that whole like workflow, all those steps already taken care of as part of what you're doing. And speaking of those kinds of processes that can really slow you down, Jesse, let's talk about automated service requests. I would venture to guess that that's a significant time saver when you do that right. Tell us about what you've got going on there.
Yeah, I mean, we're SEI is the largest debt service company in the world, right? And as the last mile for these families, it is very important for us to deliver a quality service for a grieving family. And one of the things we want to do is to make sure it is seamless from everything from the first request, whether it's pre-counseling to post-counseling. And we want it to like that, whether it's the Amazon shopping cart or like the Domino's menu style of how it's delivered, so they know. And when the request comes in for either a statuette or flowers or car service, that comes in, and that API script comes in to make sure that everything's just bing, 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 all the way across for all those different business units are able to get everything they need. And it's no longer from the 1980s where it's carbon copy paper form and it's make sure we're trying to get that into the home office. It's essentially, it's no different, but it said they're just plugging it onto the computer and it goes through all the way and everybody's in line. And then that way, that end family is getting exactly what they need, when they need, how they need it, right? But on the back end, like James said, all those workflows are automated and everybody is interchanging, but people are being taken out of the process. So we don't need 500 people to go through and touch all those different hands. It just goes, okay, they need a car service to pick them up. Fine, done. And it just bing, 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 and it goes through. They need a bronze, but we just finished up something with a bronze memorial team statuette or a bronze plaque that goes through it. It automates, it goes through, and from start to done, all those things would automate through that workflow. You never thought you use ITSM for car service plus flowers plus bronze memorial things for that purpose, but we can and we do. And all for the quality of service for those families.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because to us, processes that look very different start to look a lot alike to an automation script or to a bot or to inside a workflow engine. It's a lot of the same things going on. And I see real common threads actually amongst all the examples we've talked about here, from employee administration to audits to automated service requests, and all the other pieces that we've looked at. There's this idea of we're going to speed things up. We're going to take the guesswork out of the process. We're going to free people up to do the kinds of things that people are good at. Let the machines do what machines are good at. So a lot of common threads running through all of that, and a lot of great benefits, I think, to making automation a big part of what you're doing with your service management solution. But let's wind the clock back just to wrap things up. Let's say you haven't done any automation yet, James. You're just at the first stage. For those who are listening in, those who are watching, who want to know about how to get started with this, what's the one thing you would do differently, or what's the one thing you would advise to someone who's just starting this automation journey for enterprise service management?
I think what we've always done is actually it's a good idea probably to draw your workflow out. So play the process out. So don't just go straight into the system and start building the workflows. Actually, get pen and paper or digital, whatever works best. Post-it notes, you did that works quite well, and draw out the steps and that kind of user journey. And then you can kind of chat through it and play a few things for it. So you can play scenarios. If it was software requests, you could kind of go, how would that actually flow through and how would that work? And actually, have we got it right? And then you can play around with it, adjust it, and then you've got a nice kind of visual, user journey, if you want to call it that, or flow, workflow for kind of that automation. And then you can then go off and automate it. That's probably my tip in that. So instead of diving straight to the system and trying to build something and then it not working, or you put it live and then actually it doesn't work very well, and then you kind of get people disengaged and don't want to kind of buy into the process. So yeah, draw out the workflow, have a think before.
Going into a journey, maybe it's a good idea to have a map. That sounds like a good piece of advice. Yeah. Jesse, what do you think? What would be the one bit of advice you would give?
I'm a huge whiteboard person. I know my boss loves Miro, but I'm a whiteboard guy. I have a big whiteboard I often take out. I would, take more time in the past to go over the process with teams like HR first, and make sure when I was, I guess, a lot younger, as I'm the old man now, to go through with HR, make sure they understand the process, and the people come first before the technology. That technology can always come later, but it's about the people and the process and understanding that, and that there can always be training, and that we shape the technology around those other things. And that's really what it's about. Whether it's the bots are being used to be what the needs of people, right? The onboarding is about the comfort, the process is the needs of people. It's a people tool. It's not an IT tool. It's a business tool for people. The people at the company that supplies these things, they're coming from people. It's people oriented. Excuse me. But that's what I would have done a better job, or at least attempted to do a better job in saying, hey, show me what you need. Let's go do this and eliminate the technology from this, and found more common ground.
Well, that is a great thought to close on. I can't believe how fast our time has gone. But yeah, let's put a plan in place. Let's have a map for what we're doing, and let's keep the focus on who this is really all about. Automation is really all about improving the experience for the people who are there. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for being with us today. Appreciate both of your contributions. Wish we had more time to talk even further about this.
Much.
And with that, I'm going to say thank you all for joining us today. We will continue to respond to your questions. If you're just getting those into the chat, we'll be getting those in there. Thanks for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. So long.
Yeah.